Welcome to another edition of the Butting Heads podcast on Rams Talk Radio. And when I say Rams Talk Radio, I mean iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Google Play, Android, Player FM, and IEBeatRadio.com, airing Wednesdays, Saturdays, and Sundays at 10 a.m. Pacific time, because we're everywhere, guys. And joining me is Johnny Gomez, a happy camper after a pretty good Rams victory on Sunday, huh?
Oh, yeah. I couldn't be any happier. You know what? They should make a Rams camp, though. I'd totally attend.
Were you at the game?
Sadly, I was not. I wanted to go, but you know what, man? It was hotter than hell.
That's what I heard, yeah.
I'm going to stay home and finish an article.
Yeah, man. People are a little critical of the crowd at the game. I don't have enough. I'm not there. I don't really have an opinion on it right now, but it's hard to sit out in that kind of stadium for that long, man, especially when it's a game that either they're going to win pretty easily and it's not going to be that entertaining, or they're going to lose and you're going to be really, really pissed off leaving the stadium. Even if it's like an exciting game that comes down to the wire. I mean, would we have been happy about that? I feel like we've been pretty angry if that game came down to the wire, especially knowing what we know now.
I'd be pissed. No doubt about it. This is not a team that the Rams should struggle against, and they didn't, so I'm happy about that.
Yeah, let's jump right into it while we're at it. It was a 34-0 victory for the Los Angeles Rams over the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals didn't cross midfield until the end of the game. The Rams pretty handedly dominated on offense. Jared Goff threw an interception, but other than that, they only punted twice. No other turnovers. Let's start with the negatives. Do you have any?
Let me think really hard about this for a second. Other than a couple of passes that Jared Goff made, you had mentioned the interception. I don't even know if I can necessarily fault him for that, because at that point I know Goff wasn't really, playing conservatively. He was basically just airing the ball out at that point because they were already up by a good margin. I couldn't recall, what exactly the point margin was at that point. He just tossed something out. He was being chased by Chandler Jones, I believe, and he just saw an opening, or a slight opening rather, and he threw it on the side of Patrick Peterson, and of course Peterson made him pay for it. But again, at they ended up recovering the ball at like the 2 or 3 yard line. So I don't even necessarily know if I fault him for that too much. Just I hope he doesn't continue to play like that. I don't want him to develop any bad habits out of this.
Yeah, so here's the thing about the interception. It's 3rd-9 in the third quarter. Like you said, they're up 19-0. They're in full control, and they are on the Cardinals' 21-yard line. Now remember, we don't have a kicker. So they're not kicking a field goal here. So Jared Goff, I liked it. It didn't work out. I don't think many corners would have intercepted that pass. It wasn't the best pass, but it was also a great play by Peterson, who's one of the best in the league. It's funny how the Cardinals have multiple best in the league players and are this bad. But anyways, so you're not going to kick field goal there. I guess he could have made the conservative play, tossed it out of bounds, lived to fight another day, play 4th down. But I kind of respect the pass there. And I feel like I say this every week. We've watched so many years of Rams football where they would never even consider to make a play like this. They never even consider that pass. They just throw it out of bounds. They don't try to go deep. They don't try to do anything interesting. And here we are with a guy who's got a comfortable lead. He's trying to squeeze it into a pocket, and it's not the riskiest situation. The odds of the Cardinals getting that ball, making a hard drive down the field, and then winning the game were pretty low. At that point, they hadn't given any reason to believe that would happen. But, yeah, I was fine with it. It wasn't the best throw, but he's still learning. It's a play that I kind of liked him going for, and it didn't work out. We lived to fight another day, so whatever. He did miss that throw to Robert Woods, which was pretty brutal. He was wide open in the end zone, a little bit too wide open. It was kind of that Nick Foles syndrome where you kind of would rather just squeeze it into really tight spaces all game instead of actually making the easy throws. But I'm going to give him a pass on that one too. I don't know how you feel. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, most of his passes were good. If you make 2 bad passes in a full game, the rest of the team should probably get you a win. And he was a part of the win, but everyone stepped up. When's the last time we had a Rams game where we could sit here and say, yeah, I don't have any negative things to say besides one mediocre pass?
It's been quite a long time since I've ever had that privilege to say that. Maybe back in the Greatest Show on Turf era.
Yeah, maybe.
I would have to go all the way back then, I think. But sure, there was moments that they could have, played a little bit better, but defensively, I would say they were, for the most part, flawless. I really am struggling to think what they could have done better. But
nothing, man. If you don't let a team pass midfield until 30 seconds left in the game, that we have perfect quarterback ratings. That's what I would consider a perfect defensive rating. They not even sniffing the red zone. They didn't even pass midfield. They played the whole game in their own territory. And so my question for you on that is, who gets more credit for that? The Rams defense or the Cardinals offense?
I'm not going to bash too much on the Cardinals offense because, okay, let me put it this way. Is the Cardinals offense good? I wouldn't say so, no. But at the same time, there are some star-studded players on this team. They still had David Johnson, who they were frustrated because he couldn't get anything going. He couldn't get the ball moving whatsoever. And, of course, when you're trailing by so much at the end, you got to abandon the run, and then you have to force Sam Bradford to pass. And Bradford was not comfortable in the pocket at all. There wasn't many sacks at the stat line, but at the end of the day, he was being rushed and hurried to the point where he wasn't hitting any of his targets too often, and he couldn't find Larry Fitzgerald too much. And, well, he got injured mid-game. There just wasn't anything going well for that offense. So I'm not going to say that this is a poor offense because there are some star-studded players there. I'm not going to say it's a great offense, but I'm going to give this win basically to this defense because the defense was phenomenal. This is exactly the type of defense that wins Super Bowls.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that there was a horrible offense. And the Rams defense does deserve the credit because there's one guy that they really need to prepare for, and that's David Johnson. And they did. But we know from experience when you have a terrible offense with one good player, find ways to get in the damn ball. Find a way to let him have some space, give him some breathing room. And, Steven Jackson, who I'm referring to, was able to run for 1,000 yards in 8 straight seasons. If they can't get David Johnson a 1,000-yard season, it's a disaster because I've said it before, I think he might be the most talented running back in the NFL. And he didn't look like it on Sunday. It was kind of a similar Todd Gurley-esque 2016 situation, which as a David Johnson fantasy owner, I'm praying we don't get into, but God, their offense was just so uninspiring. They didn't do anything creative. They didn't do anything to try and switch it up and get David Johnson the ball in the space he needed. And Sam Bradford, my God, dude, he was absolutely terrible. Like I like Sam Bradford. I don't have a kind thing to say about him after that game, man. I think they're gonna let him start this week just so Josh Rosen doesn't have to get thrown to the Bears, and then I feel like that's it. That's all we'll see from him for the rest of the season, unless he goes out swinging that game, which he's not going to. I'm gonna say it, he's not gonna have a good game against the Bears because there's absolutely no reason to believe that he's capable of it right now.
I just got to feel for Sam Bradford a little bit because just think about what you just said there right now. He just went against Aaron Donald and Sue, and now he has to go against Khalil Mack in that, terrorizing Bears defense. Good luck, Bradford.
And so by the time this podcast is out, by the time you're probably listening, I'll have an article out on Roto Baller about David Johnson. And I kind of mentioned that I know it's the Rams, and you could give the Cardinals somewhat of a pass for playing this bad against probably the best defense in football. But they scored 6 points against Washington last week, and Sam Bradford didn't play any better in that game. David Johnson played a little better, but like you have a bad game against Washington, you have a terrible game against the Rams. I mean, there's something is amiss, and something is like very, very wrong with that offense. And they're not going to make the playoffs this year, but if they want to have any hope of doing anything, they need to switch it up. Whether it's Josh Rosen, whether it's just finding new ways to get David Johnson the ball, I don't know, but they need to do something because it's brutal. But enough about the Cardinals. This is not Cardinals talk. This is Rams talk. So let's continue to talk about the Rams. And how about we go to the special teams, where two big performances happened here because Greg Zuerlein left the game with a groin injury, and Pharoh Cooper is out for a couple weeks, maybe a couple months. We're not too sure the timeline yet. But let's talk about JoJo Natson, who we didn't even mention him when we talked about him last week. He was the Rams' kick returner in the preseason behind Pharoh Cooper. Tough battle to make the team. Obviously, when you're going behind an all-pro return man, we didn't need to keep two return men. Continue to make the team. Luckily, we were able to go out and get him, and he was fantastic. How did you feel about JoJo in this?
JoJo is going to make this a tough decision, when Cooper comes back. This is the type of player that you want, a guy that is trying to fight a way to make a name for himself. And at this point, if Natson continues to have these kinds of performances, the Rams aren't going to want to cut this guy. He's going to be too valuable to cut. And at that point, it's going to be interesting to see what the Rams do, because there's going to be all kinds of other teams in the NFL that are going to have their eyes on Natson if he has this performances week in and week out.
Yeah, even if he doesn't keep the kick returner job, and unless he really, really goes off like this level every single game, I feel like they will give it back to Cooper just because of how good he was last year. But I think Natson's earned a spot on this team. I think if he continues to play close to this level, it's going to be hard to cut him. And they're not going to be able to get him on the practice squad because somebody's going to go sign that dude, considering how impressive he looked. So I think he will keep a spot on the roster. Maybe they'll try and develop him at receiver a little bit. Maybe they'll try and get him some of those little Tavon Austin gadget plays. God. But yeah. So he was really impressive, man. And it's crazy that we just replaced an all-pro like that and we feel this good about it. That speaks testaments to Les Snead. That speaks testaments to Bones, Coach Fossil there on the special teams. And we got to talk about Johnny Hekker too, man. I mean, making a field goal, it wasn't that far, but he did make an extra point, which is farther now. And I know we could sit here and act like, yeah, every punter should be able to kick and every kicker should be able to punt. They're not practicing that. That's like saying that every wide receiver should be able to run the ball. That's not what they do. That's something they've been training for. It's tough to just step in there and play a position you don't play in any sport. You're a right fielder in baseball, you switch to the left field, it's not seamless. It's a little bit easier than going from kicking to punting, but that's not the position he plays, and he was asked to step up, and he did. And I mentioned this in my 5 stars of the game article on ramstalk.net. If you haven't read it, go check it out. I feel like we do appreciate Hekker, but sometimes just being a great punter can go unnoticed because you really only notice bad punting. And same with long snapping. You don't notice good long snapping. You notice when there's a bad long snap. But they're never ahead of the 20-yard line, I feel like, in any scenarios. And most of the time this season, Hekker's only punted 4 times, which is pretty crazy. And 2 of them have been behind the 10. And one was a touchback, and one was in between the 10 and the 20. So, I mean,